The mirrored glass of the Grand Bell Hotel reflected more than just the towering skyline of downtown Chicago. It reflected the people who wished they belonged inside. Dressed in marble and chandeliers, the lobby smelled like polished wood, lavender oil, and old money. And at the very center of it all stood her, Janelle Brooks, 27 years old, black, poised, invisible. She adjusted the collar of her crisp white blouse, rechecked her lipstick in the corner of her phone, and tucked a small, anxious breath behind her smile, the one she had worn every day for the last 2 years, the one that told the guests, "Yes, I'm here to serve you," even when they never looked her in the eye. "Good morning. Welcome to the Grand Bell Hotel. How may I assist you?" Her voice was smooth, trained, practiced, like jazz in a tight dress. The man in front of her didn't answer. He simply slid his platinum Amex across the marble counter without so much as a glance at her name tag. No hello, no thank you, just assumption and impatience. She'd come to expect it. She tapped quickly on the keyboard, found his reservation, smiled tighter. "Mr. Callahan, your suite is on the 21st floor with a city view. Shall I call for assistance with your bags?" He finally looked up, just for a second, and something flickered behind his eyes. Not recognition, not appreciation. It was something darker. Surprise, maybe. Or judgment. "You speak really well," he said, tone almost impressed. "Didn't expect that." Her smile didn't falter, not even a twitch. She'd been through worse, much worse. "Thank you, sir. Elevator to your left." He walked away. She exhaled. Tiny, quiet. One guest down, 50 more to go. At 10:13 a.m., Miss Hawthorne passed behind the desk. Sharp-heeled and sharper-tongued, the assistant general manager looked like she lived in spreadsheets and slept with corporate handbooks. Her eyes skimmed Janelle like she was scanning for lint. "Janelle, the centerpiece in the front lobby is off-center by half an inch," she said without slowing her stride. "I'll fix it," Janelle replied, though it wasn't her job. It never was, but it was always expected of her. "You're representing the front face of this brand. We need flawless." Miss Hawthorne walked away before Janelle could answer. Flawless. Perfect. Polished. Smiling. She wasn't sure when she'd become more brand than human. Lunch break came at 2:06 p.m., which meant she had 12 minutes instead of 30. She sat in the back corridor near the employee locker room, quietly munching her salad while scrolling through her phone. Her group chat with college friends buzzed with news of promotions, baby bumps, and one lucky soul who just bought her first house in Atlanta. And here was Janelle, still renting a one-bedroom apartment above a nail salon, still dodging microaggressions like potholes in the street. Just before she put her phone away, a news alert popped up. "Chicago Hotel faces racial discrimination lawsuit by former staff." She clicked. It wasn't the Grand Bell, but it was another luxury hotel. Same zip code, same language, same excuses. She stared at the article for a long second before locking her phone. Then she stood, fixed her blouse, and stepped back into the lobby with the smile she had mastered. By 5 p.m., the lobby had become a carousel of designer luggage and impatient voices. A woman in pearls snapped her fingers instead of using words. A man insisted that Janelle recheck his reservation for the 5th time because someone like her probably made a mistake. She didn't flinch. But when a black family entered the lobby, father in a navy suit, mother in heels, daughter clutching a stuffed panda, Janelle's smile turned real for just a second. The little girl waved. Janelle waved back. Then came the moment she dreaded. The security guard, a man new to the shift, approached the family and asked, too loudly, "Are you looking for the service entrance?" Janelle's throat went tight. "No," the father replied calmly, voice cutting like glass. "We're checking in to the presidential suite." The silence that followed was louder than anything Janelle had heard all day. The security guard turned red. Janelle burned inside, but said nothing. Couldn't. Not yet. That night, as she closed her shift, the lobby finally emptied. Her feet ached, her soul more so. But she checked her reflection one last time in the gilded mirror behind the desk. There it was. The smile. Still there. But a storm was coming, and Janelle Brooks would not be behind this desk forever. The Grand Bell Hotel had always had secrets. Janelle had felt them long before she understood them, lurking beneath the velvet rugs and winding marble staircases. They lived in the way certain doors remained locked, how certain guests were never questioned, and how the smiles of management only stretched as far as their profits. But tonight, as the city lights blinked against rain-slicked windows and the night shift began, she would hear something different, something not meant for her. It started just after 11 p.m. She'd volunteered to stay late to help with a high-profile check-in, some tech executive from the coast, the kind who booked an entire wing and expected private chefs flown in from Milan. The lobby was quiet. Miss Hawthorne had gone home. The other concierge, Darren, was upstairs handling a room key mix-up. It was just Janelle, the click of the wall clock, and the low hum of elevator music. Then it happened. A voice, faint, from the back hallway near the executive offices. "She's asking too many questions. That girl at the front desk." Janelle froze. The words were muffled but clear enough. 2 voices, male, maybe more. The walls of the Grand Bell were thick, but old, and if you stood by the vent near the employee break room, sometimes they betray whispers they weren't meant to. "She's smart," said the first voice. "She notices things. We need her gone." "We can't fire her without reason. Not now. Not with the lawsuit at the Rosemont." Silence. Then we make a reason. Janelle stepped back, heartbeat sprinting. Her shoe scuffed the tile too loud. The voices stopped. She spun and walked quickly back toward the lobby, past the flower arrangement she'd straightened that morning, past the portrait of the hotel's founder, Reginald Bell III, whose eyes always seemed to follow her. She sat back behind the desk, hands trembling slightly. That had not been her imagination. She replayed their words in her mind. She notices things. What things? By the time Darren returned, whistling with a clipboard under one arm, Janelle had composed herself again. But something had changed. Her smile was gone, replaced by a focus as sharp as the creases in her uniform. "You okay?" Darren asked, noticing the shift. "Just tired," she replied. He nodded, unconvinced. "I get that." Later that night, as she walked home in the cold rain, umbrella swaying in the wind, Janelle's thoughts raced faster than her steps. She thought of how Mr. Carlson from finance always locked his drawer when she walked past, of how room records were sometimes altered after VIP visits, of how she once saw a maintenance staffer go into a suite at 2 a.m. and never come back out through the lobby. But most of all, she thought about how invisible they thought she was, how safe they felt speaking with the walls. She reached her apartment, climbed the stairs, and kicked off her wet shoes. The window in her living room overlooked the south side, brick buildings, flickering streetlights, kids playing ball late under halogen glow. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Janelle sat down with her laptop and started a folder titled Grand Bell Observations. Inside it, she typed her first note. 2 unidentified male voices, threatening tone, discussion about removing me. Location, rear hallway outside executive office. Time, 11:07 p.m., February 18th. She stared at the blinking cursor, then added, "They think I'm just a smile. Let them." And she hit save. Tomorrow, she'd go to work like nothing happened. But she would start watching the hotel the way it never expected to be watched, from the inside out. Morning brought the usual rhythm. The marble lobby echoed with the soft roll of suitcase wheels. Uniformed doormen smiled for the guests who tipped and ignored those who didn't. Janelle stood behind the polished concierge desk, every hair pinned neatly, her badge gleaming. Janelle L., Guest Services. She smiled, offered directions to brunch spots, booked town cars, gave complimentary passes to the spa for honeymooners. On the surface, everything was normal. But Janelle was watching now. Watching how Miss Hawthorne laughed too hard when board members came through. Watching how security guard Rick always looked the other way when the freight elevator dinged at odd hours. Watching the cleaning crew, the floor managers, the tightly sealed executive wing no one entered without clearance. And then, around 2:15 p.m., something odd happened. The reservation system pinged a check-in. Mr. Elias Drew, Penthouse North, 7-day stay, prepaid. That wasn't the strange part. What was strange was this. There had been no prior booking. No staff had been alerted. No room preparation. And worst of all, Penthouse North was already occupied. Janelle blinked at the screen. Refresh. Still there. She flagged Darren. Did we overbook the penthouse? He leaned over her screen. No, that's weird. That's Mr. Santoro's suite. He's staying until next Friday. Exactly, Janelle said, lowering her voice. But this shows someone else just checked in. Darren frowned. Must be a system glitch. But Janelle had already learned. At the Grand Bell, nothing is just a glitch. That night, after her shift ended, she didn't go straight home. Instead, she waited in the side lounge near the elevators, sipping peppermint tea and pretending to scroll her phone. At 11:03 p.m., the light above Penthouse North blinked. Ding! The doors opened. A tall man in a charcoal coat stepped out, carrying no luggage, no phone, no briefcase. He looked ordinary, harmless even, but something in his stillness made the hairs on Janelle's neck lift. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who knew he wasn't supposed to be seen, and yet didn't care. She made a mental note. No check-in, no luggage, no keycard shown at desk. The man turned not toward the bar or the exit, but toward the executive wing, past the velvet rope, past the staff-only sign. He walked in. No one stopped him. The next day, Janelle dug deeper. She called the guest archives, pretending to verify a gift basket delivery. Yes, I'm looking for Mr. Elias Drew, checked in to Penthouse North. Could I confirm the check-in time? There was a pause. Then, ma'am, we have no record of a Mr. Drew. That suite is currently registered under Mr. Santoro. Janelle's pulse quickened. Are you sure? Completely. In fact, only Mr. Santoro and security have access clearance to that floor. She hung up. Something was very, very wrong. That night, she added to her Grand Bell folder. February 19th. Unregistered guest entered Penthouse North. No record, no check-in at desk. Walked freely into executive wing. Possibly connected to The Voices. Name used, Elias Drew. Unconfirmed. She stared at the screen, chewing the inside of her cheek. Then, below her notes, she typed one final line. This hotel is a web. I just pulled the first thread. And the cursor blinked, waiting for more. Janelle's morning began with a malfunctioning espresso machine and a snide remark from Miss Hawthorne about her lipstick being a little too bold for our conservative guests. She swallowed her retort, smiled, nodded, because she had bigger things on her mind. The name Elias Drew haunted her, a ghost guest, invisible to the system, yet very real in the marble halls of the Grand Bell. Janelle knew that name wasn't an accident. It was a crack in the surface, one that revealed something deeper. And she was done ignoring cracks. During her lunch break, she made her way to facilities under the guise of requesting extra towels for the fourth-floor conference suites. The ID scanner beeped as she entered the service hallway. Cold air, white tile, the humming of the building's nervous system, wires, panels, boxes labeled with room numbers and RFID codes. She found Thomas, mid-40s, wore faded Metallica shirts under his maintenance uniform, and never said more than was necessary. "Hey, Thomas," she smiled. "Got a minute?" He looked up from a circuit panel. "Depends. I'm trying to help a guest who lost his key card." She pulled out a fake name card she'd made. "Mr. Elias Drew, Penthouse North. Could you check the card history?" Thomas frowned. Penthouse keys aren't like the rest. They're encoded manually. Only security and top management generate them. Could you still check? She asked gently, just to see if anything's weird. He sighed, rolled his chair over to the security terminal, and typed in a few commands. The screen filled with logs. Entry attempts, successful swipes, rejected scans. After a moment, Thomas leaned forward, squinting. There's a swipe last night at 11:03 p.m. at the Penthouse North Reader. By Elias Drew? He shook his head. That's the thing. The card used was blank. No name, no user ID. Janelle's heart thudded. What do you mean? I mean, Thomas said, turning toward her, whoever opened that door didn't have a card registered to them. It was a master key, but there's no record of who made it. Janelle swallowed. So, someone created a key, but it doesn't exist in the system? He nodded slowly, which means someone high up wanted it that way. That night, Janelle stayed later than usual. She wandered the halls, careful not to draw attention. At 10:57 p.m., she positioned herself near the potted ferns outside the elevator, phone camera ready. 11:03. Ding. He stepped out again, Mr. Elias Drew, or whatever his real name was. This time, he looked more tense, more alert. He walked past her without looking, but she could feel his awareness, like he knew she was watching. She snapped a photo, blurry, but enough to prove he was real. Then she did something dangerous. She followed. Keeping her distance, Janelle crept behind him through the west hallway, past the executive boardroom, to a narrow corridor with no cameras. He approached a door with a brass nameplate she had never noticed before. Archives. He tapped the master key. The door clicked. He stepped in. It closed. Janelle waited. 30 seconds. 60. Then she tiptoed to the door. No handle, no keypad, just a smooth, silent surface. Whatever this room was, it wasn't on any map. She pressed her ear against the door. Faint voices. Not one, not two, many. And one word kept repeating, low and rhythmic. Protocol. Protocol 7. Then a whisper, closer than it should have been. Step back. Janelle spun. No one there. But when she turned back, the door was open just a crack, and in the darkness beyond, a single red light blinked once and vanished. Later, alone in her apartment, she stared at the blurry photo on her phone. She didn't sleep, because this time she knew. This wasn't about a guest. This was about something built into the bones of the hotel itself. And she had just found the secret door. The Grand Bell had 62 floors, but tonight the elevator paused on a floor that didn't officially exist. Janelle wasn't supposed to be here. She had waited for the graveyard shift when most of the execs were gone and the cameras were set to auto-cycle every 90 seconds. She wore her second-hand sneakers instead of heels, stuffed her curls into a service cap, and carried a janitor's supply cart as a decoy. She didn't press any buttons. She waited. And at exactly 12:13 a.m., the elevator's panel blinked. A floor between 42 and 43 lit up, 42R. Restricted? Reserved? Real? She didn't care. She reached out and tapped it. The elevator jolted, not like a normal stop, but as if it was shifting tracks underground. The lights above flickered to red. Her ears popped. The metal hum grew louder. When the doors opened, she found herself facing a hallway that didn't match any other floor. Dark wood, old sconces, no security cameras, and silence that felt designed, not empty, but expectant. As she pushed the janitor cart inside, Janelle kept her phone camera running discreetly in her apron pocket. She turned a corner and came face to face with a bronze bust mounted on the wall. It was the founder of the Grand Bell, Arthur Bellington III, his gaze cold and proud. Below it, etched into a plaque, "This house keeps its promises." A shiver ran through her. She moved deeper. Every room had thick oak doors, no numbers. Some had strange symbols carved in. One had a handprint scanner with a line of dried red dust on the panel. She passed a cracked open door. Inside, a man in a tailored suit sat at a desk, murmuring into an earpiece. Janelle slowed. She caught pieces of the conversation. "No, she's seen too much. No record of her parents. Yes, the Creed flagged her file last year." Her breath caught. Her? Creed? Then the man turned his head, just slightly. Janelle moved, quick, silent. She ducked into a side hall and nearly collided with a mirror. Except it wasn't a mirror. It was a live feed. She stared at the display, her own face, caught in black and white footage from 2 minutes ago. The hallway, the bust, the plaque. Someone was watching her, had been watching. Behind her, a voice spoke. "You shouldn't be here." She spun. It was the guest, Elias Drew. Close enough now to see the faint scar over his right eye, the tattoo peeking from beneath his collar. His voice was low, careful. "You're not one of them," he said. "I'm not one of anything," Janelle whispered. He studied her for a moment, then nodded, once. "Good, then you might live." He led her to a small room lined with filing cabinets and old key cards hanging like dog tags on metal hooks. At the center, a rotary phone. Beige, silent. Janelle stared. "What is this?" Elias pulled open a drawer. Inside, photos, names, hotel staff, guests, security men. Some with a red X over their faces. "I was like you," he said, "just a guest who saw too much. And now? Now I'm the warning." Janelle swallowed. Warning of what? He turned to her, eyes fierce. "This hotel isn't just where people sleep. It's where secrets go to stay alive. The Grand Bell keeps people." He handed her a photo. It was a picture of her, younger, smiling, standing with two people who might have been her parents, but their faces had been scratched out with ink. "I didn't know. You weren't supposed to." The rotary phone rang. Once, twice. Elias paled. He grabbed her arm. "You have to run." "Why?" He looked at her, something close to regret in his eyes. "Because they never let the whisper leave." Janelle bolted, down the hall, past the bust, past the plaque. She hit the elevator. It didn't move. Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned and found herself face to face with a man she'd only seen in portraits, Arthur Bellington IV, alive, smiling. "Miss Carter," he said, as if they were old friends, "welcome to the heart of the Grand Bell." The doors opened behind her and she stepped in blindly. As they closed, she heard him whisper, almost fondly, "Some doors open only once." The elevator rose, too fast. Her chest ached. The lights blinked back to white. When they opened again, she was in the lobby. Bright, normal, clean. But when she turned, the floor panel no longer had 42R. It never had. And her phone? Wiped. Everything gone. Except the photo in her apron pocket. The one Elias had given her. She held it. Because now she understood. She hadn't been working at the Grand Bell. She'd been living inside its memory. Janelle didn't sleep that night. Not because of nightmares, but because reality had turned into one. She sat in her tiny studio apartment, clutching the worn photograph Elias had given her. No timestamp, no caption, just her as a child between two adults with faces mutilated by ink. Who was she, really? Who were they? And why did the Grand Bell keep a photo of her in a secret archive? Her phone cleared. Factory reset. Every photo, every note, every recording she had from that night gone. But something deeper stirred inside her. Not just fear. Curiosity. The kind that burned slowly. The kind that would not let go. The next morning, she returned to the Grand Bell. She was 15 minutes early, which meant she arrived just after the morning shift change, when everyone was too tired or too distracted to notice a low-level receptionist blending in. She logged in, checked schedules, kept her eyes down, but her ears were open. Snippets of hallway conversations floated by. "We're running a Room 917 event today. Notify only those on the Creed list. Tell housekeeping not to enter. I don't care what the chart says, it's unoccupied. That's the room that—" Shh, we don't say it out loud. Janelle typed it into the system. Room 917. Nothing. Not in the guest registry, not in the floor plan, not even in the emergency blueprint folders she quietly downloaded from the internal server onto a flash drive hidden in her name tag. But the elevators listed a 9th floor. That much was real. So, during her break, she rode one up. The 9th floor was polished and uneventful. Rows of cream-colored doors with gilded numbers, velvet carpet, and silence. Until she noticed something strange. The numbers skipped. 911, 913, 915. Where was 917? She walked slowly, letting her fingertips brush the wall. There was a space between 915 and 919 that seemed longer, as if a door had once existed there and had been sealed. She knocked gently. Nothing. Then, barely audible, a whisper from behind the wall. Her hand froze. It wasn't English. She leaned closer, a breath against wood. A single word repeated. Veritas, veritas, veritas. Latin. It meant truth. Back at her desk, she dug deeper. She accessed the staff logs and typed in Room 917. A result popped up, but not in any usual file. It was buried in an old training video archive, attached to a file labeled incident_917.mp4. She clicked it. The video was grainy, old. It showed a staff member, Security Officer Victor Simmons, standing outside Room 917, visibly distressed. His voice, though shaky, was clear. "It's not a room. It's a memory trap. I went in with a guest and came out alone. The door won't stay shut. I've asked for reassignment. Please, please, before it takes me too." The footage cut out suddenly, and just like that, the file disappeared. Auto-deleted. Janelle didn't go home that night. She stayed, waited, until 2:17 a.m. She slipped onto the 9th floor again, her keycard upgraded courtesy of a lost badge from an executive elevator. She stood before the blank stretch of wall between 915 and 19. She pressed her palm against it. It was cold. She whispered, "Veritas." And just like that, the wall rippled. A door appeared, dark wood, numbered 917 in tarnished brass. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. She turned the knob. Inside, the room was silent. No furniture, just mirrors on every wall, and in each one, her reflection showed a different age. Janelle at 7, at 11, at 15, laughing, crying, running, failing. But in one reflection, she wasn't alone. A man stood behind her, tall, gray eyes. Arthur Bellington IV. He whispered, "Everyone leaves footprints in this hotel, Janelle. You've left more than most." The door slammed shut behind her. Lights went out. She reached for her phone, and in the glow of its screen, across the mirrors, words appeared in dripping red. "What you forgot, we remember." Then, all at once, the mirrors shattered. The elevator shuddered. That wasn't unusual in an old building like the Grand Bell, except the lights didn't flicker and the music didn't stop. It was too smooth to be a mechanical glitch. Too intentional. Janelle pressed the lobby button 3 times. Nothing happened. Instead, the floor number on the screen blinked once. 13. She froze. There was no 13th floor. The Grand Bell had always skipped it. Even the floor plan she stole confirmed it. 12 jumped directly to 14. And yet, the doors opened. A faint hiss of air. The floor ahead was dimly lit, hushed in a way that suggested the walls themselves were listening. The carpeting here was different, red velvet stained in places that didn't look like wine. Ornate doors lined each side, numbered in a strange serif font, 1301, 1303, 1305. No signs, no exits, only a hallway full of quiet. And eyes. She couldn't see them at first, but she felt them, behind peepholes, within paintings, in the way the chandeliers above seemed to tilt ever so slightly to follow her steps. Watchers. Somewhere in the shadows, a whisper rose, soft as breath. One of them's broken the loop. Not supposed to be here. The bell has rung again. Janelle moved slowly. Her hand brushed the flash drive still tucked in her name tag. She tightened her grip. At the far end of the corridor, a door stood slightly ajar. 1313. The brass handle was ice cold. Inside, the room wasn't a room. It was a library, but not like any she'd seen before. Books floated mid-air, pages turning slowly, whispering in dead languages. Walls were covered with maps, each one a diagram of the hotel, but twisted, recursive, with rooms stacked sideways, upside down, even inside other rooms. At the center stood a woman in a black concierge suit, her eyes covered by a velvet blindfold. She held a guest log, its pages alive, twitching like breathing parchment. "You are not on the list," the woman said. Her voice was kind but final. Janelle stepped forward. "Neither are you. No one talks about this floor. Why?" The woman tilted her head. "Because silence is part of the agreement." "What agreement?" The blindfolded woman took a breath. "That we forget in order to protect." "Protect what?" She smiled. "The truth." And then the books in the air stopped turning. Pages snapped shut. The paintings outside blinked. And in that moment, Janelle realized the room was not meant to keep things in. It was designed to keep people out. The woman's voice grew darker, but not angry. "You've seen too much. And yet, not enough." Suddenly, the ground shifted. Books fell like birds dropping from the sky. The door behind her slammed shut, and the room began to collapse inward. Janelle ran. She didn't look back. She slammed into the elevator doors just as they opened again, light flooding in like salvation. The screen read, "Lobby." She didn't hesitate. Back on the ground floor, the night felt off. The front desk was empty. No concierge, no bellhops. Just the sound of a grandfather clock ticking far too slowly. Janelle stepped outside the Grand Bell into the cold air. But something was wrong. The city had changed. The cars were older, the lights dimmer. And the billboard across the street, once an ad for luxury watches, now bore an eerie image. A portrait of her face. Underneath, "Guest of the Month, Grand Bell Hotel, 1939. Janelle staggered backward, turned, and saw her own reflection in the lobby glass. Except the version of her staring back wore a bellhop uniform and a blindfold, just like the woman from room 1313. Then, a voice whispered from behind the glass, "You're checking in for longer than you think." Janelle didn't sleep. How could she, when every reflection she saw showed something just a little wrong? In the hotel's bathroom mirror, her reflection blinked a second too late. In her phone screen, the image froze before catching up. Even in the puddles on the sidewalk that night, the woman staring back wasn't quite her. Wearing the Grand Bell uniform, always blindfolded, always smiling. She hadn't spoken to anyone since the elevator incident. Management had gone silent. No messages, no warnings, no reprimands. It was as if no one knew she'd ever taken the ride to the non-existent floor. Or worse, they knew and had agreed not to say a word. By day, the hotel buzzed like normal. Guests laughed, staff polished brass, valets shouted across the driveway. But at night, there were no shifts, no check-ins, only the silence and the watchers. She returned to her post behind the front desk that evening, forcing routine into her trembling hands. Straighten the pens, check the screen, offer smiles, hide questions. The mirror behind the desk had always been decorative, tall, ornate, framed in gold. But now it drew her gaze with a weight she couldn't explain. There were fingerprints on the inside, from the other side, and every night they multiplied. She stared deeper and deeper, until one night the reflection blinked first. Not her, it. The figure inside looked like her, but didn't move like her. It was smoother, too calm, too deliberate. It tilted its head slightly, watching her with something close to pity. Then it raised its hand and traced a word onto the mirrored glass from the inside. Run. The glass trembled. The lights above flickered, not just behind her, but inside the reflection. Janelle spun. Everything was normal, but when she looked back at the mirror, her reflection was gone. Completely. Only the empty lobby stared back at her. The next morning, she stormed into the archives room, lower level beneath the staff quarters, a place barely anyone used anymore. Filing cabinets, dust, and records no one wanted to digitize. She flipped through old blueprints, guest ledgers, and employee logs until she found it. Floor 13, Maintenance Plan, 1939. There it was. Not a ghost story, not a hallucination, a real architectural plan, with handwritten notes. Project sealed per agreement, access restricted to initiates. Do not permit elevators to stop on 13 unless signaled by Operator Bell. She looked closer, at the signatures. One of them, at the very bottom, was a name she recognized. Marla Yu, head concierge, and the woman who hadn't been seen in decades. Later that night, Janelle tried something bold. She stood in front of the mirror again and whispered, "I saw you. I saw floor 13. I want answers." Nothing. Then her reflection returned. Calm, composed, wearing the blindfold. It reached forward, and this time so did she. And when their fingertips touched the glass, it cracked. A thin web of fractures across the center. The lobby lights dimmed, the brass bell on the desk rang itself. One sharp note, then another, then three, a pattern, a code. And then the mirror whispered, "You're being watched, but not just by us. He's returned, and he remembers you." Janelle staggered back. She looked around. Nobody there. But her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from an unknown number. Only 3 words. "Don't trust mirrors." She turned away, but not fast enough to miss the last thing her reflection mouthed before it vanished. The real fight starts now. Janelle didn't go home that night. She didn't even grab her bag. Instead, she followed the mirror's cracks, its warnings, down to the basement archives again, past the sleeping lights, past the employees-only doors that now creaked like they remembered her. The folder she'd seen the night before, Floor 13, Project Sealed, was gone. In its place, a blank, yellowed file stamped only with a black wax seal. She opened it anyway. Inside was a single photograph, black and white, grainy. A group of hotel staff standing proudly in front of the Grand Bell, circa 1940. Housekeepers in crisp uniforms, bellboys with shining brass buttons. A stern woman in concierge attire stood at the center, hand resting on a silver desk bell. Marla Yu, alive, unblinking, blindfolded. And just behind her, a boy. Half hidden in shadow, but looking straight into the camera with glowing red eyes. Janelle dropped the photo. It slid across the floor and stopped at a pair of shoes. Old, leather, quiet. She looked up. A woman stood above her, maybe 60, maybe older, skin like cracked parchment, eyes sharp behind thin gold glasses. "I was wondering when someone like you would finally come looking," the woman said. Janelle backed against the file cabinet. "Who are you?" The woman bent and picked up the photograph, brushing it off like it was holy. "I'm what's left of the staff who didn't take the vow. I remember what they tried to forget." Janelle swallowed hard. "You worked here?" The woman gave a dry smile. "Still do, in a way. My name is Lorraine Hale, guest relations, and you, my dear, have already been chosen." Chosen for what? Lorraine turned and pulled open another cabinet, far older than the others, with locks that had long rusted away. Inside, handwritten ledgers, candle lacks, pages tied with red string. They built this place on a deal, Janelle. Not just bricks and money, but silence, blood, and memory. The Grand Bell doesn't just house guests, it holds secrets, keeps things in, or tries to. She placed one of the ledgers in Janelle's hands. The cover read, "The 13th Guest." Lorraine continued, "Every few decades, someone wakes up, notices too much. You. Like the boy in the photograph. He saw behind the curtain, started asking. Same as you." Janelle's voice was barely above a whisper. Who was he? The founder's son, Abel Ferris. They said he died in 1942, but he didn't. She tapped the photo gently. He's the one with the red eyes. The world spun. Janelle gripped the ledger tighter. "Why me? I'm just a front desk girl." Lorraine looked straight into her soul. "No, you're not. You're awake. And once you've seen the cracks, you can't unsee them. The bell rang for you, didn't it?" Janelle nodded. Then it started. Lorraine stepped closer and placed a small brass key in Janelle's palm, cold as ice. It vibrated faintly. "You're going to need this." "What does it open?" "Not what, where." Janelle's hand trembled. She already knew. She returned to the elevator at 3:13 a.m. Pressed no buttons, just waited. The doors closed on their own. The brass panel flickered. Then a new number glowed faintly. 13. The key burned in her pocket. And then the elevator dropped. Not like a ride, but like a fall. The lights above flickered. Floor 12. Floor 13. Then it stopped, between them. Darkness all around. The doors creaked open. Janelle stepped into silence. Old wallpaper, cracked tiles, a corridor of shadows and dust. And at the far end, a boy. Back turned, red light bleeding from beneath his eyelids. She took one step forward. He whispered without turning, "You came." And the door behind her vanished. Janelle's breath caught in her throat. The boy stood still, unmoving, a silhouette cut from shadow and red light. Around them, the air buzzed like the inside of a clock, ticking sounds with no source, as if time were stretching thin. "Who are you?" she whispered, though part of her already knew. He slowly turned. His face was young, no older than 16, but his eyes, those eyes had seen 100 lifetimes. Crimson, but not glowing like a monster's, burning, like coals under pressure. "My name is Abel," he said. But they tried to make me forget. She stepped closer. You were the founder's son. He nodded once. I was the first to ask questions, the first to hear the bell ring when no one else could. The hotel chose me. Then it tried to erase me. Janelle looked around. The hallway stretched forever in both directions, yet it felt claustrophobic, like the walls were breathing. There were doors along the corridor, each one unmarked. Some dripped water. Others pulsed faintly, like they had heartbeats. Abel turned his head toward one of them. This place is what they built to bury mistakes. Floor 13, she murmured. He looked at her, curious. But you're not a mistake. You're a spark. Janelle felt the key in her pocket vibrating again. Why me? Because you remember what the others refused to see. You noticed the mirror. You heard the bell. The grand bell only chooses the ones who can't be silenced. Abel stepped closer, and suddenly the hallway trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. One of the unmarked doors slammed open in the distance, spilling light like a broken dam. He didn't flinch. They'll come for you now. Who? The ones who keep the story straight, who protect the myth of perfection, the smiling managers, the guests who never check out, the ones who wear faces that aren't theirs. Janelle felt cold crawl up her spine. What do I do? Abel held out a second key, twisted, silver, and warm to the touch. You open the door they fear the most, the one at the very end. But be warned. His voice dropped. Once it opens, the grand bell will no longer be a hotel. It will become what it's always been underneath, a memory machine. And every truth it's stolen will come flooding back. Behind them, the elevator sparked. Someone, something, was descending. Abel turned toward the sound. No more time. Go. Janelle gripped both keys and ran. Past the dripping doors, past echoes that whispered her name, past paintings that changed as she looked at them. She reached the last door. It was made of black stone, ancient, carved with the same symbol etched into the concierge desk bell, 2 interlocked circles and a line struck through them like a scar. She held up both keys. One clicked. The other burned. The door groaned and opened inward. Beyond it, a room of mirrors, infinite, shattered, floating midair. And in the center, a version of herself, smiling, too wide, too still, and wearing a name tag that said, Marla. Janelle gasped, but the door closed behind her, and the mirrors began to whisper her name. Janelle stood frozen. The mirrors didn't reflect her properly. Each panel showed a different version of her, one smiling with perfect posture in the tailored uniform, another weeping quietly in a supply closet, and another covered in soot and ash, holding a bell that cracked with each breath she took. But it was the figure in the center that gripped her attention, the other Janelle, or rather, Marla, identical in every way, except for the impossibly wide grin and cold, dull glass eyes. "Welcome back," Marla said, her voice sickly sweet. "Shift change?" Janelle stepped forward, the floor soft beneath her feet like velvet stretched too tight. "You're not me." Marla tilted her head. "Oh, but I am. I'm the version they wanted, smiling, polite, silent." As she moved, the mirrors pulsed with fragments of sound, laughter, screams, elevator dings. Janelle's knees trembled. "You're a recording," Janelle muttered, "a loop." Marla's smile didn't falter. "Aren't we all?" Suddenly, the room trembled. Mirrors cracked slightly, thin fractures spiderwebbing across their surfaces. "Your presence here is unauthorized," Marla said. "Reflection protocol engaged." The air grew dense. From the corners of the room, ghostly attendants emerged. shadowy versions of hotel staff, their faces blank, skin flickering like static. They moved in synchronized steps, dragging gleaming silver trays, topped with pieces of memory. Janelle saw her childhood apartment, a photo of her mother's hands, the old typewriter she used to dream of owning. "What is this?" she whispered. "Assimilation," Marla said, stepping closer. "They erase who you are. Keep only the parts that serve." Janelle clutched both keys. "I'm not here to serve." That wiped the smile from Marla's face. "You'll ruin everything." The room roared with sound. The mirrors began to hum violently, some shaking loose and floating in erratic orbits. The shadow staff advanced, reaching for her mind, for her core. But then, Abel's voice rang in her head. "The bell isn't just to summon, it's to awaken." Janelle pulled the cracked concierge bell from her pocket. It had followed her from the front desk, growing more fractured with every secret revealed. She held it high, then slammed it against the black stone floor. Clang! The sound rippled, not through the air, but through the mirrors themselves. Each reflection froze. The shadow staff recoiled, hissing, flickering violently before shattering into bursts of static. Marla screamed, not in pain, but in loss, as her face warped, her perfect smile melting, the illusion breaking apart. "You shouldn't have come here," she gasped. "I was here all along," Janelle replied. "You just couldn't erase me." The mirrors exploded inwards. Light, pure and warm and overwhelming, flooded the chamber, stripping away the artificial constructs. The room transformed. It was no longer a reflection prison. It was a record vault. Endless rows of memory files stretched in all directions, labeled by names long forgotten, staff who had vanished, guests who had never left, and among them, her name. A file drawer marked Janelle Carter, redacted. She pulled it open. Inside, photographs, journal pages, shift logs, a keycard marked Executive Override, and a faded document titled Grand Bell Hotel Experimental Memory Management System, Subject Number 243, Compliance Failed. Janelle stepped back. She wasn't just a front desk clerk. She was once a whistleblower, and they'd rewritten her life to silence her. As she absorbed the truth, the far wall peeled open, an elevator waiting. Not gilded, not pristine, but raw, industrial, real. A whisper echoed across the chamber, Abel's voice fading. "Truth is a room no door can hold shut forever." Janelle stepped in, pressed the only button glowing, roof. As the elevator ascended, she looked into the broken bell still clutched in her hand. It had one more ring left, and the whole city would hear it. The elevator groaned as it climbed. Unlike the rest of the Grand Bell's polished illusions, this lift was skeletal. Steel girders exposed, wires hanging like veins, buttons flickering with ancient energy. A lone fluorescent light above Janelle buzzed and pulsed, giving her face a ghostly hue. The cracked bell in her hand vibrated faintly, not from motion, but anticipation. She had seen the truth. She was the truth. As the floor count climbed, 43, 44, 45, the air grew thin. Not from altitude, but from the weight pressing down from above. Secrets this tall don't stand without pressure. At floor 50, the doors opened, not into a rooftop garden or panoramic lounge, but a command room. Concrete walls, humming servers stacked to the ceiling, banks of monitors showing every hallway, every guest room, every staff member. Names crawled across the screens like digital ants, behavior metrics, psychological profiles, facial recognition overlays. And in the center, a man in a slate-gray suit sipping from a porcelain cup. "Ms. Carter," he said calmly, not turning around, "or should I say, Subject 243. She stepped out of the elevator, bell in one hand, keycard in the other. He turned. Director Ellis. Sharp eyes, too calm, too knowing. "We didn't expect you to climb this far," he admitted, setting his cup down. "The reflection protocol should have—" "It cracked," she interrupted, "like everything else here." He nodded, almost with pride. "We tested your limits, rewrote your memories, fractured your reality, and still you climbed." She raised the keycard. "I found my file." He gestured toward the wall. "That file is only one of thousands. We store memory, reconstruct identity, guide behavior. Grand Bell isn't a hotel, it's a simulation, an engine for human adjustment." Janelle stepped closer. "You erased people." "We reformatted them," he corrected, "for stability, for profit, for peace." She stared at the banks of monitors. On one screen, a child being tucked into bed again and again, looped. Another, a janitor in the lobby wiping the same spot endlessly. And on screen 4, herself, standing at the front desk, smiling. "I want it shut down," she said. Ellis sighed. "You'll destroy decades of work. Then I guess I'm overdue for a promotion." He raised his hand, pressed something under the console. The walls shimmered. Suddenly, she was no longer in the command room, but back in the lobby. Standing behind the concierge desk, guests walked by, suitcases rolled. She blinked. Was it all a dream? But then, the bell in her hand was still cracked, and in her pocket, the override keycard. No illusion could replicate that. The system was trying one last reset. Janelle gripped the edge of the desk, eyes scanning the crowd. There, Abel, watching her, just for a second, then gone. She turned to the guest log monitor, paused, typed. "Attention all guests. System override in progress. Please evacuate to the rooftop. The truth is waiting." She hit send. Alarms didn't lair, but elevators began moving, doors clicked open, and across the hotel, people began waking up, not from sleep, but from illusion. Because she wasn't just a clerk, she was the system's final vulnerability, and she had one ring left. Janelle lifted the bell. It glowed. She rang it. Clang. Across the grand bell, reflections shattered. Staff remembered their names, guests remembered their lives, and the rooftop flooded with people, staring up at the sky, seeing it for the first time in years, maybe decades. Janelle stepped back into the elevator one last time. Only one button remained. Reset. She didn't hesitate. As the building began to hum and shake, she whispered into the elevator. "For every erased name, for every silenced voice, for every truth you buried." Then she disappeared, and the grand bell rang no more.